And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Friday, December 20th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, even though, of course, as we start the show, my camera decides to act up, but just wanted to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate, get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. It makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net. That is gsmcpodcast.net. So let's get into what we are going to discuss for today. So we're going to start off the show. We are going to talk about last night's game between the Chargers and the Broncos. The Chargers pulling off a comeback in that game and improving to 9-6 on the season. Both teams now are 9-6 on the season. The Chargers now have passed the Broncos in terms of the wild card in the AFC. They are now the fifth wild card team, the sixth wild card team, and the Broncos have now dropped to 7. So we'll talk about it. We'll also preview the Texans-Chiefs game. It looks like Patrick Mahomes is going to play, so we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about the other game on Saturday as well between the Ravens and the Steelers. That is a big matchup in terms of playoff positioning as well when it comes to the AFC North. And then we'll also get into looking at the rest of the games for this weekend. We'll take a look at the college football playoff games, as well as the early slate of games on Sunday in the NFL in the fourth part of the show. And then the final part of the show, we'll take a look at the rest of the slate on Sunday in the NFL. So let's get into the first topic, which is talking about the Chargers-Broncos game from last night. And got off to a rocky start for the Chargers. They were coming off of a loss against the Buccaneers, 40-17. Their defense got torched in that game, and it looked like we were heading towards a similar result last night early on, because the Broncos, they went up and down the field. They were running the football, dominating the line of scrimmage. Chargers defense really just had no answers in the beginning of the game. And to the Chargers' credit, they were still able to come back and win this game. And like I said, they got the ball to start off the game, and the Broncos went 10 plays, 72 yards down the field, and then you had a rushing touchdown by Estime, a 3-yard touchdown. Chargers did respond, however. They went 8 plays, 70 yards down the field, and Gus Edwards from 1 yard out scored a touchdown. But then the Broncos scored yet another touchdown. Bo Nix connected with Michael Burton for a 1-yard touchdown, so that made it 14-7. Chargers then kicked a field goal on their next possession, and then the Broncos scored a touchdown. So 3 touchdowns on their first 3 possessions. Then we had a couple of punts to follow that, and then we had the Chargers driving, and Justin Herbert threw a pick, and this was in Denver territory. So really at this point, I thought, this is not looking good for the Chargers. However, what was interesting is towards the end of the first half, the Broncos, in the beginning, they tried to put together a drive to maybe get some points before the end of the half, but then the Chargers defense was kind of holding them down. So they kind of just ran the football on 3rd and 13, and they were kind of assuming that the Chargers were going to just let them run the clock down. But no, what ended up happening was Jim Harbaugh called the timeout, so the Broncos punted, and there ended up being a penalty on the play, fair catch interference, and that led to a free kick, which led to a Cameron Dicker 57-yard field goal right before the end of the first half, which is something that's rare. You don't usually see a free kick happen, but that's a rule. And the Chargers got 3 points, before the end of the first half. So that was kind of a momentum shifter there. But then the Broncos, they actually opened up the third quarter with a field goal drive. Will Lutz, a 41-yard field goal. But then the Chargers answered with a touchdown. They went for two, didn't get it. This was another Gus Edwards touchdown, a 5-yard touchdown now. So that made it 24-19. Then the Broncos then punted, and then the Chargers took the lead at that point. And on the touchdown pass, great throw by Justin Herbert to Darius Davis in the left side of the end zone. Kind of just flicked it to him as he was going to the ground, and Davis made the play. And an unlikely receiver to make that catch, but that's who Herbert found. That's who Herbert's throwing to this year. So the Chargers then went up by 8. They got the 2-point conversion. Herbert connected with Joshua Palmer in the back of the end zone. So he tried to one-hand it, didn't catch it, and then he caught it with two hands off the rebound. And he was able to keep both feet in bounds to convert the 2. And the Chargers were up by 3 at that point. Then we had some punts. The Broncos, punted twice. Chargers in between that, they punted. And then I was hoping that, to at least have the Broncos cover, that the Chargers would run out the clock. First 2 plays, there was no gain. You had Gus Edwards run the football. He didn't gain anything. And this is where I thought that the Chargers were doomed, was when Quinn Johnston dropped that pass on second down, where he was wide open and he just dropped it. And that's been a problem. That's been a problem over the course of his career. But then on 3rd and 10, Herbert scrambled for a first down, 16-yard scramble to pick up the first down. And then the following play, Gus Edwards, a 43-yard run. At one point, I thought he was going to take it to the house, but he got it down to the Broncos' 31-yard line. Then he lost 3 yards on the next play, but then Herbert, a little shuffle pass to Hassan Haskins, and that led to a 34-yard touchdown and a Cameron Dicker extra point that put them up by 10. So then what the Broncos ended up doing was they got into Will Lutz's range. They got to the 37-yard line. They kicked a 55-yard field goal. They got it. They went for the onside kick. They didn't get it. And the Chargers just ran out the clock. Herbert threw up a pass as time expired. Because the Broncos did have 2 timeouts left at that point. But, Broncos, they were in control of this game. But after that free kick, things changed. Justin Herbert had a very good second half. And, still a little banged up. They did interview him after the game. He said the ankle is doing better. But, he's definitely still feeling it, of course. But, they got some contributions out of the running game. Gus Edwards, like I said, 2 rushing touchdowns in this game, had that big run towards the end of the game that led to the Haskins touchdown. Herbert with the touchdown pass to Darius Davis, which was a great play. Ladd McConkey had 6 receptions for 87 yards. Good to have him back in this game. Joshua Palmer, like I said, caught the 2-point conversion. And you know what? Shout out to the Chargers defense. They really shut down this Broncos offense in the second half. The Chargers outscored them 21-6. And, if you take out that field goal towards the end of the game, it was 21-3. And Bo Nix was moving up and down the field. This running game for the Broncos was really working in the first half. But, they only finished with 110 rushing yards. I thought they were going to finish with more the way they were running the football in the beginning. But you also saw early on that Bo Nix had to check it down a lot. There was a lot of short passes. Really did not load it up at all during this game. There were a couple times where it looked like he wanted to take a deep shot. But he did take a deep shot at one point, but it ended up being incomplete. But I know they did a flea flicker at one point during this game. But the safeties for the Chargers, Derwin James and Tony Jefferson, they didn't bite. So, the Bo Nix had to check it down. But, I thought the Chargers defense, they really stepped up in the second half. It didn't look good in the beginning. Did not look good in the beginning. And, it didn't look good for Justin Herbert in the beginning, because when they threw the interception towards the end of the first half, or he threw the interception towards the end of the first half in Broncos territory, you thought, this is just not looking like the Chargers' night. But the Broncos kind of cracked the door open when they tried to run out the clock, and then, you had the fair catch interference that led to the free kick, and that led to 3 points, and Justin Herbert had a good second half. So, now the Chargers, they're 9-6. The Broncos are 9-6. Chargers have the Patriots and the Raiders to finish off the season, which they should win both of those games, in my opinion, and get in. And then as for the Broncos, their last two games are tougher. You got the Bengals next week, who are still alive mathematically, and then you have the Chiefs the following week. So, and maybe the Chiefs don't have anything to play for at that point. We'll see what happens these final few weeks here because they have home field advantage still up for grabs, and the Chiefs want to make sure they clinch that. So things could get very interesting down the stretch here with that final wild card spot because, like I said, the Bengals they still kind of have a chance, and the Colts still have a chance, the Dolphins still have a chance. Those 6-8 teams that was a big loss last night for the Broncos, and to help out those teams a little bit just to keep their hopes alive for another week. But no, I think, like I said yesterday when we went over the playoff picture, I think that the teams that we see in the playoffs right now, in the playoff picture, that's what we're going to get. I don't think you're going to see those 6-8 teams past the Broncos. But, if the Bengals beat the Broncos next week, I don't know. All of a sudden you think maybe there's a chance. We'll have to wait and see on that. But it was an entertaining game last night. A bounce-back game for the Chargers. They definitely need that, especially after being embarrassed at home by Baker Mayfield and that Buccaneers offense. That defense stepped up, and Justin Herbert stepped up. Ryan Fitzpatrick had some strong comments about him earlier in the week, and Justin Herbert delivered. And I do think that next year, if you can improve this receiving core and, continue to build up this roster, this is going to be a dangerous Chargers team. They have the right head coach in place. They have the right quarterback. I don't think how this roster is constructed, and I wouldn't blame Justin Herbert for some of these losses this year. Ultimately, yeah, in some of these games, yeah, he could have played better, but this roster is not up to par yet, and they got to get some more help for him. And when they do that, this team is going to be very dangerous moving forward, and it's dangerous now. And I was impressed by Gus Edwards last night. He did provide a little bit of a jolt at times. Hassan Haskins scoring the touchdown. They were doing this without J.K. Dobbins. So now I think he's supposedly going to get activated off of IR next week. So if they can get him back, that's huge for this offense going forward. And he got McConkey back, which is huge as well. So, yeah, now look, this Chargers team, I don't expect them to go on a Super Bowl run, but, they could still be dangerous in the playoffs. They have the potential to do that. But they're going to have to do it going on the road. So we'll see what happens, but they get the win. Both teams now 9-6. Let me know what you guys think about this game from last night. What were your takeaways from it? Let me know in the comments. And I just realized that this whole time I had the second segment on the bottom instead of the first one. But anyways, you guys get the idea, though. So we're going to take our first break of the show now. And then when we come back, we will preview the Texans Chiefs game. CJ Stroud and Patrick Mahomes will be facing off for the first time, as long as Mahomes is going to play, which it looks like he will. So make sure to stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.